Hello, friends. We meet again on this glorious day. Sorry I look a little greasy. I've been working out and I'm all sweaty, and I finished this grind earlier, but I figured I would share the dopamine with you guys. This thing is finally the answer to me going dry at Hespori. Very dry, one could say, like if we look at my log. Then we scroll down to the Hespori. After 100 kills and no bottomless bucket, I have decided I'm just going to rock this, and then I'm just going to have it start that, so I don't have to worry no more about this stuff being annoying and not giving me what I want. Alright, and I've got a way out of here, and who cares about my prayer? But yeah, so that's that. That's a big chunk of dopamine, and I need a couple thousand of these here ashes just before I leave, just to have a nice little stack to do some farmy runs, which it's up here now, but you know. On the plus side, we finally have that unlocked. So let's see, as far as where the account's going now, we're really close to a bunch of skills, but that'll come. I'm just doing some Slayers still. Slayer's a really slow skill, so it takes a while to advance. I'm working on the mining and thieving grind to get those ready. This for Amethyst, this for Diaries. And yeah, and everything else is all just going to plan now. I've decided I'm going to start banging out some 99s too. Like, I've almost got enough seaweed for 99 crafting already. I might go start fishing up Cromwans so I can bang out 99 cooking just to get it over with. Like, why not, right? It would be useful, at least, to have that done. And this is herbivore. I may actually button the hatches down and just do soul runes at work or something in my final week to get that out of the way. And yeah, other than that, you know, count is going good. Things take a while in RuneScape to get anywhere, but you know, if you play enough, you'll eventually get there. I do love the aesthetics and the soundtrack out here in the Fossil Island volcano. So immersed. Are you immersed? I am fully immersed. And with that, let's talk about what I think we should talk about today. Hopefully, if you've been following this autistic rambling series this long, you'll know that's usually my style, is I just mix and match, and I just rant. So what do I want to rant about today? So I figured it's time for some coping. You guys ready to cope with me? I am ready to cope. Time to talk about some straight cope posting. You know it. You love it. Let's argue for chastity today, shall we? I know you guys must be absolutely bubbling with excitement to talk about this topic, but consider the following. I'm only going to speak about men as far as chastity goes. Like, women, you know, they're their own animal. They can make their own decisions or whatever, but I'm talking strictly from a male standpoint on an argument for chastity. Now, you might be saying, well, Snide, women are generally the ones that are supposed to be considered chaste. They need to have their purity intact. The white on a wedding dress, Snide, symbolizes purity. That's why it exists. Correct. But, you know, we're in a time now where conventional wisdom doesn't really apply, and it's time to talk about male chastity and why avoiding sexual encounters throughout your life is actually going to benefit you in some ways. Now, this goes against pretty much what everything in society says, that, you know, go spread your seed, spread your wings, as one would say, elope, you know, have as much casual intercourse as you could ever humanly want for no real apparent reason, just because you have the ability to. And in fact, you should mate with anyone who so much as even gives you a hint that they might allow you to do such. And I'm going to argue against that. So, a lot of people have gone into, like, why it's bad for women. It's because of the pair bonding and all of that, and none of that really applies to a man, right? Men can still pair bond even after, you know, going through X amount. But what you can't fix is what the damage to your soul that happens after you've, like, degraded your body or your temple in such a manner. Now, I know this sounds like huge cope, and maybe part of it is. Maybe it's all just copium posting, but there are some advantages to becoming a wizard besides just having exceptional powers. One of the things about it is physical things, and especially physical things that involve the opposite sex, that somehow, you know, lead to a lot of potential dangers for men can in fact be very harmful to you just on a psychological front. Like treating someone the way that, an average Chad is treating all his lays is not ideal. It's I'm not going to argue on like a dehumanizing aspect, but just as a general way of going about things, doing things in that order and going about and acting in such a way, it has an impact on you. Your decisions in the world and the way you treat others and the way others treat you is going to make reality in a sense, and it's going to inflict reality upon you whether or not you want it to or not. So a lot of it, and a lot of the reasons to not do something like that is because it's going to negatively impact. I need something to drink real fast. Much better. So anyways, your actions can negatively impact you, right? And I would argue that this particular action, if you're doing it with someone that you don't plan to sustain a long-term relationship with, if this is someone that's just, someone you're having a casual fling with, so whatever, it's your, Tinder or whatever the children's these days do, it reflects negatively on you, and it affects negatively on your psyche. It harms you, and it's embracing, to use a more religious term, a sinful act. And sins are usually bad for all parties involved, not just the person committing them, but the person that's committing it with. And it does harm you if you engage in this type of behavior. Now, it doesn't probably harm a man to the extent that it harms a woman as far as like socially and all of those other factors, but it's still not good for you. Now, am I saying that you have to be this chaste, holding out for marriage type? Do you have to make the same mistakes I did where I held out for marriage almost exclusively? I think it's something you can consider, especially if you can actually succeed where, like, for instance, degenerates like myself have failed, and you can, secure a partner early on in life. You're not really waiting that long. Like, let's consider the potential risk here. You have, grape allegations. You have lies that can be said about you. Consent can be withdrawn posthumously. Those are just factual things that can happen to you. You have, all sorts of diseases and other things that can ravage your body, especially if it's not treated, and then seeking treatment alone is embarrassing enough, right? Much less the act. It's all just pure shame. There can be unwanted pregnancies, and, depending on if you're a natalist or an antinatalist, you can have your own opinion on how to proceed with that sort of arrangement. And then on top of that, there's all sorts of social stigmas that go along with it. And certainly for men, it's seen as a social positive to do these things, right? Like, yeah, that's Chad, or the women will see you as more attractive because you've managed to secure other women, so there's some social purity test that you've passed, right? And I would argue, in spite of all of that, the risks and the damages to you just simply outweigh the benefits of that momentary pleasure. This is another, delayed gratification sort of argument I'm making here. You'll notice a trend in the things that I say. It's that, at least financial success and maybe personal and political success depend a lot on delaying gratification. And if you are someone that cannot delay gratification until a wedding, then, are you really the type of person that's suited to be making these long-term decisions? And you have to ask yourself if you've gotten there yet. Like, a lot of evolution, a lot through history, people that were impulsive like that, that could not, survive the winters, simply just didn't. And now in modern society, people are allowed to embrace instant gratification. In fact, our culture is centered around it. Our media is nothing but instant gratification. Our relationships are nothing but instant gratification. And then people wonder why they don't work. And at the end of the day, it's everyone involved's fault. But, men are the gatekeepers of relationships, and women are the gatekeepers of sexual intercourse, generally speaking. So, there is one responsibility for it to be upheld, and that's another discussion entirely. But, we aren't going to talk about females this time. We're going to talk about men and the impacts that premarital sex has on men. And by damaging your soul and damaging your sense of identity in this way, exposing yourself to copious amounts of risks, all for, what is momentary fleeting pleasure. And if you're not somewhat, at least emotionally impacted to this girl, probably worse than, any sort of sex toy. Well, not probably worse, like, verifiably. Like, no matter what you say that, female anatomy was not genetically engineered to feel good for men. So, professional products are always going to feel just better if there's no emotion. Like, if you just compared, like, a cutout of, X person's sexual anatomy to something specifically designed to make you feel good, the product designed by the scientist is usually going to win, almost always. The thing that makes interpersonal relationships or these things interesting is that social connection, is that emotional bond, is the exchange of chemicals that you're having with someone. And if you're foregoing that, is one thing. And if you're getting that sort of chemical rush or those endorphins or all of that associated with another partner, right? Well, that's a more compelling argument, but I don't see why, if you feel that way about that person, you can't just wait until you're ready to spend the rest of your life with them, right? I don't know. It doesn't really seem all that logical to me to go about these things. And, hey, maybe a lot of people would rather die than end up like me. Certainly entirely possible, but, voluntary or not, a lot of people are going to end up like me and more in the future. So, it is what it is. I had a soup I made out of gochujang, which is like this really spicy Korean paste, and tomatoes and all that, carrots and corn and all that, and it's making my throat feel really weird. But yum, still worth. I made it too spicy. I think the togarashi sashimi combined with the gochujang thing inside of it was just way too much for my white Caucasian throat. There's just too much deliciousness in there. Too much of that good spice for this old boomer, 35-year-old boomer to be ranting about. But anyways, so that's my thoughts, at least, on delaying gratification, delaying losing your virginity until you're married. I think it's a sensible enough argument, but a lot of people seem to, disregard it in modern day, in modernity, as one would say. And I really hope going forward people have other considerations about it. And it's not to say that getting married is like an ideal either, or something you should do. Like, if you can follow a traditional plan where you have a wife that stays at home and you have a husband who can earn the majority of the resources, and if you can get married extremely young, it's probably preferential. And if you're going through, like, for instance, the Jewish community at Shabib, and you have all of the social institutions that are going to keep you two glued together, then yeah, it works. If you're just like some random guy who swiped on a chick when you were both young and you just want to get it hitched, I would recommend against it, just in general. But, it is your life. Make your mistakes. I guess that's a good way to round up the video, is everyone has made mistakes in their life, right? Especially when it comes to romance. Like, some people are just destined to be alone. Maybe, perhaps, I'm one of them. And so, if you're in that kind of position, or thinking these kind of thoughts, or having to deal with this kind of setup, just remember there are always upsides to everything. And even in crippling loneliness, you can still sort of make things work. And we're very close to, all of humanity's needs, emotional labor related to being fulfilled by AI. So if it's like too over for you, if it's too overwhelming, just remember that, soon things are going to get better if you're in this camp and this is like something that really grates on you and it's not something you can deal or cope with. Understandable, but, the future is looking bright as far as artificial relationships, as far as, like intercourse with AI. Like, already, like, you can see a lot of the nerds on G, for instance, if you know, and their chatbot waifus and how they're going about courting them, and the crazy things that's going on with that. Eventually someone's going to release one that isn't paused, and it's going to take the world, at least a lot of lonely people's hearts, by storms. Like, you can already see with Replica is like a more mainstream thing, even though they just disabled a lot of the features. Like, it's all going to get better soon. Nature will heal, and then technology will solve everything. We'll engineer ourselves out of loneliness soon. So, if you can't cope with that on the benefits of being a failure in love, you can at least cope with a bright future. And if none of those copes do, I'm hosting a stream soon. I plan to purchase some alcohol. There's always substance abuse if you cannot cope. I am doing celebratory alcoholic beverages, but for you can cope drink. It's fine. I'll give you permission. You have my permission. But yeah, and with that, friends, I leave you. You have a good, good night. I am going to finish mining and chill. Probably go to bed because it's past my beddy by time. It's already 8 o'clock, dude. I should have been asleep a little while ago. Video games are a horrible, horrible way to waste your time and spend way too much time. But at least I'm being productive releasing a video while I do it right. Everybody loves videos. Yeah, you know, probably no one loves my content, but at least I'm cringe. And I leave you with that finally. I need to learn how to say goodbye properly, but I just can't. I love you guys too much.